Welcome, folks. My name is Abigail Tucker. I am one of the co-founders of Heroes. I'm eager to have everybody joining us today. If it is your first time on a Heroes webinar, I'd like to say welcome to you. I'm going to do a couple of quick logistics here, and then we're going to jump right in. If you do not spend a lot of time on Zoom, first of all, I'm jealous, and let me give you a little bit of a rundown. On the bottom of your scroll bar, you'll see something that says audio, which is muted because we're in the webinar and video. I do have the opportunity to pull people off mute and off camera. We're going to have the opportunity for discussion today and Q&A at the end, at which we can stop recording and jump in if you have questions. You'll notice that there's a chat feature, and so you are welcome to introduce yourself if you'd like to. So, hello, I am Abigail from Denver, Colorado. If you are able to hit the chat feature and introduce yourself or just where you're from, that would be great. We always like to build community here at Heroes. The other thing that you'll see is a button called Q&A. We certainly would love to have your questions today. You can put them in the chat or you can put them in Q&A, whatever works best for you. No expectation there either way. And the last thing that I want to make sure we bring your attention to is the fact that we are recording today's session. And this is so that if people register but are unable to attend, we can send them the recording later. As I said, when we're done with our experience heroes today, I will turn off the recording and would love to dive into any questions that folks may have. Last but not least, if you registered and you are attending on demand from us, thank you again. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us afterwards. As described, our goal here today is that we are going to jump right in to the Experience Heroes event. And today's session is really twofold. It is number one, to give you actual content pieces directly from our curriculum. Many of you who are joining us today have attended some of our other informational webinars. Maybe you heard about us at a conference, maybe a friend referred you, maybe you just found our website. And this is your opportunity to really see exactly what is some of the content, as well as we're going to give you a little bit of behind the scenes and tell us what we're learning as we're implementing this nationwide. So that's our goal today. We are definitely going to be interactive if folks are able to attend. If you are not able to join us on the chat feature, we understand you're probably trying to do lots of things today besides learn about active bystandership and how to improve your workforce. But to note that in our live trainings, it is very, very interactive. All right, so again, I was talking about how we've been implementing nationwide, and actually that's an underselling. We recently were in Luxembourg, the country of Luxembourg, this spring. Their Luxembourg Prison Administration, we were out there bringing heroes to them, and really found it very cool and fulfilling to bring our passion of working in corrections and criminal justice to people even across the pond. But we are currently, our corrections module is in California, Oregon, Colorado, Washington, Maryland, of course, when we've got Luxembourg and growing. So if you'd like to learn more about that, let us know. The reason we are in some of the other states that are not mentioned in corrections is because we also have a fire and rescue module, an EMS module, healthcare and general public safety. So right off the bat, I am curious if any of you have had that moment where you wake up maybe much earlier than you intended on, and your agency has hit the news. There was an incident, harm occurred, and the worst part is that somebody saw it, and either there's this, I knew this would happen, I knew it was them, or these days, perhaps it was caught on camera, right? Body-worn cameras, eyes in the skies, a lot of these incidents are caught on camera, and you have the trifecta of the fact that harm occurred, number one. Number two, you've got it recorded. And number three, you've got it recorded that people were watching and they didn't intervene, or maybe they intervened far too late. Certainly, if you're joining us today live and you want to share an example in the chat, you certainly don't have to disclose who you are. We would love to hear. What I do want folks to know, this is that peek behind the curtains, is that when we launch into our curriculum, we actually start with case studies, and these are real events from our agencies of events where harm, either a mistake, perhaps it was misconduct, and very often the most common examples that we hear are deteriorating health and wellness in their colleagues that went unchecked for years until very unfortunate and tragic outcomes. We start out with those case studies, but then we throw people into small groups and we ask them to reflect. How about in your career? When was there a time that you witnessed harm and you did not intervene? And the psychology behind this, folks, is twofold. Number one, we know that as human beings, we learn through storytelling. So we start with those case studies so that we're bringing real stories to bring the content through the entire curriculum. And number two, we know that there is a real high risk of people wanting to what I refer to as other, right? They say, oh, well, that agency and those people and that shift. And it's really easy to identify how other people are engaging in harm. And it is a lot harder to self-reflect and think about times that we witnessed or observed harm and did not intervene. So we purposely put people into small groups so they can really have those discussions in a setting where hopefully they feel comfortable to speak freely. And then we unpack that. And we certainly tell people it's not meant to share anything that you're not supposed to be sharing. But I have never, mark my words, never done this training where we go to this small group and we ask people to share about a time that they witnessed harm and they did not intervene. I've never not witnessed having at least one person in the class share something really impactful that really galvanizes the entire class about why this is so important. One of the reasons that we have people reflect on this, both we start, remember, with the case studies, we then move them to small groups, and then we allow for a little self-reflection, is because we talked about the psychology of othering before, but the other psychology that we know is that when people reflect on those missed opportunities, it actually increases the likelihood that they will intervene the next time. If, however, they do what a lot of humans do, is they kind of stuff that down and try to pretend like it never happened, it actually does not help them intervene again, right? So it is uncomfortable, but what we want people to do is really sit in that discomfort, because we know that people who are sitting in that discomfort and they're self-reflecting about the impact that happened when that harm occurred. How did it feel then? How does it think now to recall it weeks, months, years, decades later? That action of self-reflection actually increases the likelihood that people will intervene the next time. And that's, of course, our goal in preventing harm. I just want to pause for those of you who maybe have just joined us. The goal here today in our Heroes Experience event is to give you a little bit of behind the scenes. We're actually going through some live curriculum here, but I'm taking time to really pull the curtain back and share why we do it this way and what we see in the room when we present it. So if you came in a little bit late and you have any questions at the end, we'll get some Q&A time for sure. And this webinar will be recorded and you can watch it on demand at a later period in time as well. So again, we have people self-reflect when they potentially miss that opportunity to intervene on a colleague's mistake, misconduct, or their deteriorating health and wellness. And we do that because we know that reflecting, small group activity, and case studies increases the likelihood that people are willing to engage in peer intervention. But let's start with some definitions. Many of you who've logged on today, I know, have attended some of our other sessions, so this might be not new information to you, and some of you, this is your first time. So what is a bystander? Folks, Dr. Irvin Staub is the world-renowned researcher on active bystandership. He is one of Heroes Advisory Board member. He's also one of the founding member of ABLE, Active Bystandership for Law Enforcement. Heroes and ABLE have a fantastic relationship. And Dr. Irvin Staub's research from across the globe brings us this very key definition. A witness who is in a position to know that there is a need for positive action and is in a position to do something about it. I want to really pause on why that is an important two-part definition. All of you working in public safety and certainly in corrections know that witnesses are something we're really used to, right? We've got witness statements. We deal with witnesses both in work and with the crimes that are committing. But a witness is just something who is observing and may or may not even be in a position to know that positive action is supposed to happen. A bystander is witnessing, observing the behavior, knows that positive action should occur, and is in a position to do something about it. These are two very different types of definitions, right? A witness is just observing, a bystander is in a position to do something about it. And our goal with the Heroes Active Bystandership Training is to elevate your entire workforce so they are all bystanders for each other. But I don't want to dwell too long because Dr. Irvin Staub's definition goes beyond that. So there are two types of bystanders, passive and active. So passive bystanders fail to intervene. Now, maybe they intervened too late, maybe they didn't know what to do, maybe they were unsure, maybe they didn't even know that harm was occurring until sort of after the fact. I know that that happens for me. The bummer about passive bystandership is it's a double whammy hit. First, you didn't interrupt the harm. And second, you may be communicating to others that you're okay with that harm because you didn't intervene. And the common example that I often hear when I'm talking, particularly to sergeants and lieutenants and leaders working in corrections, is that they often think about that roll call moment, right? People are just coming in, they're getting settled, they're chit-chatting, right? Roll call has not officially kicked off yet, and there is an offensive joke that's cracked, and nobody says anything. And what I have been unpacking with people is that when you don't say anything when an offensive joke is cracked, not only is there likelihood that that's going to continue, but you may have communicated to other people in the room that you're okay with that. Of course, my experience is that most leaders in corrections are not okay with offensive jokes being cracked. And it's more so a reaction of sometimes surprise. I don't want to get into this right now. I'm sure someone else will tell them to knock it off. Maybe I didn't hear that right. All sorts of reasons that we tell ourselves not to intervene. Whereas active bystanders speak up, step in, they say something. And although they may not always be 100% effective at stopping that harm, they are 100% effective in communicating that they are not okay with that harm. And that is key for cultural change, right? We want to start sending the message. There's a really great YouTube video. I'll pop it into the chat later of essentially that the standard of behavior that you walk by is the standard of behavior that you accept. This is important. I know many of you listening here today are leaders, and just know that when you're walking by and you're accepting behavior that you know is unacceptable or doesn't meet your standards, your message when you don't say anything is that that is a behavior or a standard that you accept. And active bystandership is no different. The way I really like to unpack this, folks, when it comes to the difference between passive and active bystandership, is to really put this into context with everyday sayings we use all the time. Because what you'll notice when it comes to active bystandership is that there is no such thing as neutral, right? So when it comes to no such thing as neutral, what I would encourage you to think about is that I used to use this phrase all the time that I thought meant that I was neutral, but actually I was passive. And the phrase that I use all the time was, that's above my pay grade. How many of you have used that phrase before or similar phrase? If you're able to, you're welcome to pop into the chat the phrases that you've used or that you hear in your agency. I often hear like, not my shift, right? I'm not their supervisor. All sorts of things that we say. Those phrases are actually falsely communicating that we're staying neutral. But the truth is, those are forms of passive bystandership. We are clearly acknowledging that something is wrong and that we know that something is wrong and how to fix it, but we're not taking action on that. So what I encourage you to think about is that when we're talking about active bystandership, another way to phrase this, folks, is that it is the skill behind duty to intervene. I know every single one of you most likely has a policy in your agency about the duty or the requirement to intervene. Maybe your state has required that language in state statute. Maybe your risk management company has required it. Maybe you already have it. Maybe you're following DOJ's regulations on the use of force policy, which talks about peer intervention and the duty to intercede. That's often language you see in federal, duty to intercede or duty to intervene. And active bystandership is the skill behind that. One thing as a psychologist who works in corrections all the time is that I always like to remind people something that they already know. Is it just because you tell people to do something doesn't mean they do it? Just because you tell people not to do something doesn't mean they don't do it. And when it comes to the duty to intervene, simply telling people that they must do it is not enough. You need to train them on the skills on behind that. And so when you're thinking about that incident, that moment, that incident that landed your agency in the news, or the incident that could have but didn't, and you're breathing that sigh of relief, that recent lawsuit, that overuse of force incident that you reviewed last week, my question to you is, were your people trained in active bystandership? And does your culture support it? Because making the shift from passive to active is actually really hard. It's very hard. And that's what our entire training is focused on, is the social psychology of why it is hard to intervene and then the skills to overcome it. Because the good news is that what research tells us, again, is that when we understand why it's hard and we name that and we build a culture that says, actually, let's push past that, and then we give people the skills, it becomes less hard and it becomes commonplace, and the culture supports it. So I'm going to run through a social science experiment. I've mentioned a couple of times that our curriculum is founded both in evidence-supported programming as well as research, and I want to bring you one of those research topics that we use in our curriculum. Please note that we do several of these in our curriculum. They're very game show style. I would certainly love for those who are attending live, if you're able to pop into the chat, I'm going to be asking you for some guesses and some percentages, but we're trying to help people understand that it's easier said than done to intervene even when you want to, and that's your values. So this experiment comes to us from New York City. So Darley and Latine actually were in New York, New York. They are at that university in 1968. And bonus points if you know the real world event that inspired these researchers. So they're in New York, it's the late 1960s. And what they tell their subjects, who are of course all students at NYU, is that they're here to study about what it's like to be a student in a busy urban environment. And hey, whether or not the students thought that that's what it was or not, who knows? They came to collect their, I don't know, maybe $10 at the time. We're talking 1960s. It might have even been less than that. But when the student comes in, right, they're the true subject. And let's just say I'm the social science experimenter. And I walk the student down this hallway, kind of that you see here on the left, and I put them into their room. I will show them an intercom system. And then I'll explain that the intercom system works kind of like a two-way radio. People can't talk over one another. In addition, that we've rigged it to stop after about 2 minutes so that everybody has a chance to talk. And I will tell the student that I'm not listening in. I really want you to speak freely. Well, that is lie number two, right? Lie number one is the social science experimenters, that they're here to talk about what it's like to be a busy student in a busy urban environment. Lie number two is that I won't be listening in, because they are. And then we're going to gear them up here for lie number three, which is what I'm going to tell the student is, this is your room and we've got students in every other room and you'll get to talk to the other students via the intercom. Well, that's lie number three, because actually every single one of those rooms or students is a recording. It's not a live student, because they're not actually here to see what this conversation happens. They're here to see something else. What they're here to see is that they will, through the recording, demo for the live student that one of the other students is in distress, and they want to see if that other student comes out of the room to check on the peer student. So they run this three different ways. Way number one is that the real student believes that it is just them and the other student. And this other student, we're going to call them student number two. It's a recording, but they're in every other experiment. And this student in their intro will say, I'm prone to having seizures. And at some point in time, while student number two, which is again is recording, is talking, they'll actually say, ooh, they'll start to slur and spur. They'll say, I feel a seizure coming on. And then it will go silent. They'll hear a thud. And at that moment in time, the researchers want to know what percentage of our true subjects leave their room to go check on student number two. That's the first way they run it. Second way they run it, it's our true subject, student number two, remember the recording, seizure, and then they just make believe that there's another student. Again, it's a recording, there'll be real voices, but it's all a recording. And then the third way they run it, it's our real student, student number two, the one who's going to have a seizure, and then four other students. So our true subject student believes that there's a total of 6 people in this hallway, all hearing the seizure. And what they want to know is, at the time of the seizure, what percentages of our true student leave to go check. And so what we'd love to hear from you folks, if you are attending live today. If you're not attending live, just roll with it. What percentage of our true students do you think leave their room when they think nobody else can hear the seizure? And folks, in our live classes, we have people guessing all over the place. We do guesses in lots of different ways. Sometimes we use voting mechanisms. Sometimes people use a whiteboard. But I'm here to tell you, I was just training last week, and I tend to get guesses anywhere from 0 to 99. Guesses are all over the place, right? But when they think about how many people could hear that seizure when they only thought it was them, the true student, and the other person hearing the seizure. And then we ask them to ponder the next one. When your true student believes it is them, the recording having the seizure, and I think there's another student, what percentage of students do you think will leave and go check on them? And most of the time, folks, as you can imagine, the guesses start to decrease, right? They start to think, well, if I thought it was 80%, now I think it's 60%. And then when we say the last scenario, we add 4 students. As you can imagine, it comes down again. And I've just populated the results on the slide deck. And so the actual results of this study is that when nobody else could hear, the student believed it was just them and the student having the seizure, 85% of them came out to check on their peer student. When they added a person, it dropped to 62. And when they added a fourth person, it dropped to 31. Now, here's the key thing, folks. That the only thing that changed was the perception of adding more people. And look at that major change, right? From 85 to 31. This is huge because what we're seeing is that when we add more people, it changes our behavior. And what it changes is whether or not we think we are going to be coming from passive to active bystandership. That's what Darley and Latané's research tells us all about. They actually break this down into two terms. One is diffusion responsibility. And the minute this slide pops up, I get everybody in my classroom saying, oh yeah, somebody else will do it. But then I ask for examples. Like, what are examples in corrections in your own workforce where people don't intervene because they think somebody else is going to do it? And I hear everything from just keeping the lunchroom clean and tidy, cleaning things up in general, notifying somebody that something is broken and needs to get fixed. And I hear this even just picking up extra shifts, right? All those things can happen. Certainly, there's more serious ones. But that's different than pluralistic ignorance. And pluralistic ignorance is when we believe that we know that there's harm occurring, but nobody else is intervening. So we start to second guess ourselves. We think, wow, maybe it's okay. Maybe I'm the one who misunderstood. Maybe everything else is fine. And that's a really key difference, folks, because that is one that people are more prone to even after they learn this, right? Most individuals who go through our training, when they learn about diffusion responsibility, it's so much easier to start punching through that in your personal life and in your work life. But pluralistic ignorant one, that is harder to punch through because there's a lot more social norms. And one of the things we hear from all of our correctional agencies is that the population who's really susceptible to pluralistic ignorance is new hires and new transfers or new promotions. So I'd like you to think about what percentage of your workforce as a new hire, a new transfer, or newly promoted, and just know that they're really susceptible to not intervening, even when they know that something's wrong, because if nobody else is doing anything, they're going to second guess themselves and assume that everything is fine. The good news is that active bystandership can really help us shift from passive bystandership to active. Again, we do so by giving people awareness, we give them the skills, and we know that that builds courage. One of the things that we also know from research is that when people are facing things that promotes fear or worry, is that practice decreases their fear and increases their courage. This is incredibly important because we tend to think that people are just born or not born with courage, and that's not true. In fact, going back to Dr. Irvin Stout, the world-renowned researcher on active bystandership, one of his best quotes is that heroes are not born, they are made. And we believe very clearly that the hero are those humble individuals who are punching through passive bystandership to active bystandership. We know they're doing that with skills, awareness, and practice. For those of you who are just joining us today, welcome. Today's session is being recorded and it'll be available on demand. We are doing a slice behind the scenes where we're bringing some of our curriculum forward and explaining how we unpack this in class. So again, when we spend in our class, we spend the whole first section talking about what is active bystandership, what is it not, what's the social psychology behind why it's hard to intervene, what are other industries that have implemented active bystandership? Because actually there's a lot. Our college campuses have done so to reduce sexual assault. We know that in the airline industry, they've done so in the flight deck to reduce mistakes and errors that save people's lives. And we also know in law enforcement culture, it's been implemented in the form of active bystandership for law enforcement, otherwise known as ABLE. And we know it's been implemented in the medical industry, specifically in operating rooms. And so why not in corrections, right? If these other industries are taking active bystandership and training their workforce on how to intervene when they see harm, remembering that active bystandership is the skill behind the duty to intervene, why not corrections? So whether or not you're federal, state, jail, juvenile, we know that individuals working in corrections face a high amount of stress, they face a high amount of workload, they can often sometimes just simply face decision fatigue, right? They're just tired of making decisions. And the last thing you want them to do is really struggle on the duty to intervene. You want them to have that active bystandership skill. But as we're looking at this slide here, our cornerstones of active bystandership, you bet we want to reduce mistakes, hands down. I mean, I cut my teeth as a clinician working in jails. I've worked in juvenile detention facilities. I have the chance to do consulting and training in state facilities. Lord knows I've made a ton of mistakes, right? Well, who hasn't? Preventing conduct unbecoming. Absolutely, we want to prevent this. Many of our national instructors are actually currently or formerly IA investigators for their agency. And one of the things that they share with me quite a bit is that it's really frustrating when they get a case on their case, another, IA case, and they look back and they see years of mistakes and deteriorating health and wellness that preceded this conduct unbecoming. And what they tell me is, now my hands are really tied. I mean, there's not much I can do when I get it on camera, this unbecoming or, misconduct. What's unfortunate is there was a lot of opportunities that got missed for intervention. But we also want to talk about promoting health and wellness. As a psychologist, my why for being invested in this work is that I really do not enjoy going to funerals, but I really want to stop going to funerals where people say, I wish I would have said something. It's unacceptable. The death by suicide rate in corrections is unacceptable. The health and wellness impact, hands down, in my opinion, is one of the toughest jobs in public safety is working in corrections. And anything that we can do to tackle that, I am all for. And that includes active bystandership training. Because when you have your entire workforce trained to intervene when they see a colleague deteriorating, then you can make better use of those wellness supports. We're actually at an era right now in public safety where people are very aware of the health and wellness issues and impacts. They often have a lot of health and wellness services, EAP, peer support, therapy dogs, you named it. I've got a whole nother webinar on best practices in health and wellness in corrections. And what I find is that people have a lot of these, they're not always being utilized. And we see active bystandership as a lever to help increase that utilization by decreasing that help-seeking behavior. But we're also here to co-create a healthy culture. And I really want to just highlight our corrections community for this. Like I said, in Heroes, we're really about the entire public safety and criminal justice community. But it was actually our correctional workforces that really shared with us that one of the things that they know is that you got to have the culture of active bystandership plus the skills to really see that difference, and that it's got to be everybody's job. It can't just be leadership's jobs to create the culture, right? It's got to be everybody, bottom down, bottom up, top down, outside in, and inside out. I really appreciate them naming that. And the other thing that we want to share with you is that, those are just some of the slides. We have a full curriculum that's, a small slice, wanted to give you a real behind the scenes look. We also want to tell you what the data tells us. So we do surveys following our training, and what we find is that 94% of people tell it was very relevant to their job. 97% rate our national instructors as fantastic, something we're really proud of. If you've not been to our website, if you go to our website, there's one that says team, and you can say, or I think it's about us, and then you hit team, and you'll see all of our national instructors. And you'll see that these are people who are really steeped in their work. Right there with the jeans and the collared shirt with the sleeveless cardigan, that's Michael McIntosh. He's one of our national instructors. He's a former sheriff, works also still in a different sheriff's office, and he has seen everything from patrol to jails, all sides of the sheriff's office, and he is one of our absolute best national instructors. He's there with one of our folks from Denver Sheriff's Office who's receiving his certificate. He became an agency instructor. Just love those smiles. But we've got national instructors like me who are from healthcare working in corrections. We've got national instructors who've worked in juvenile. We've got former police officers, correctional, quality assurance. So we really bring professionals to help elevate it. We know that correctional officers deserve high quality training, and that's something that's really important to us that we bring. But I really like this last one, which says that people would absolutely recommend it to a colleague. That says a lot. It's one thing if you go through the training and you say it's great, but if you say that you would recommend that to a colleague, we really appreciate that feedback. That's not to say that we haven't learned a couple of things along the way. A quote right there is from one of our agency instructors who was completing their 3-day train the trainer. Even though it's been only a couple of days, the concept stuck with me almost subconsciously. I mean, we asked him this in follow-up. On the left-hand side, we've got our friends from Connecticut. In the middle, that's the Luxembourg Prison Administration. And on the right-hand side of the slide, you've got a therapy dog in training. That therapy dog is training to become a therapy dog specifically for public safety. And so that was Mac, and he attended our Train the Trainer here in Colorado. If you'd like more testimonials or you'd like to speak with people who've been through our training, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'd absolutely love to hear from you. If you want to learn more about Heroes, I'm going to pivot here in a moment to a non-recorded Q&A, but you can check out our website, our LinkedIn page. We've got lots of long content on YouTube, and of course, we've got some of that short content on Instagram if you are interested in learning more. What I'd like to do now is allow for some opportunity in case people would like to ask questions that are not specific. So I am going to stop the recording. For those of you who are attending on demand, thank you so much for listening. Please reach out if you have any questions and have a very safe day.